I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com. To run a successful business, you need one thing: customers. And how do you get customers? You get them through advertising. You get them through lead generation. But what happens if the leads don't exist or they don't have valid contact information? This is a familiar story all businesses deal with. Then they call these leads who don't exist, or they're bad numbers, or they're not in their service area. Argus 101 verifies every lead before your team picks up the phone. It's a real person in your area and a neighborhood that matches your ideal customer. Your team only calls people worth calling, thus saving you money. Free trial at argus101.com. That's ARGUS101.com. Help your business expand today. Go to argus101.com. ARGUS101.com.
Welcome to Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Sam Stone. I am flying solo today, but we're never actually flying solo because we have the best guests on radio and on podcast here on this program. Absolutely fantastic. And I'm very excited to introduce our first guest today, Jonathan Butcher. He is the acting director of the Center for Education Policy and Will Skillman Senior Research Fellow in Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation and a contributing author to a new book we want to talk about, Higher Education in America, It's Worse Than You Think. Follow him on X at JM_Butcher. Jonathan Butcher, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So I think people are starting to realize that there is an absolute nightmare unfolding, or at least being seen now finally in higher education. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to be part of writing this book, and what the focus of it really is, and what are some of the really out there stuff that you started learning as you did that.
Well, the book has really an all-star list of authors from higher ed, including college presidents like Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale. Then we have researchers from AEI and Cato, the Manhattan Institute, including Chris Rufo, and then, of course, Heritage President Dr. Kevin Roberts. So it's really a great list of experts talking about really all sides of what is a dismal state of higher education. Now, I think everyone realizes that it's expensive, but I don't know if they realize that the price of tuition has gone up faster than just about any other consumer service in the economy over the last several decades. And part of the problem is that colleges are not being upfront with students, and this is explained by Preston Cooper in his chapter. He's from AEI. They're not being upfront with students about what it really costs. So, for example, you have the sticker price, which, every parent, when they go online and they're shopping for a college with their child, you can see what the tuition is. But then there are grants and scholarships and federal student loans. And so it gets altered and changed. And then ultimately, you may even get a sticker price that's not quite accurate because it doesn't include some of the other fees that the college is going to charge for living in a dorm, or what it would cost to have a meal plan, on down the list. So it's very obscure, one, for how much it costs.
So in terms of the cost growth, I think probably only healthcare in the last 10 or 15 years has been comparable, right, in terms of the amount of inflation in that area.
Yes, I think you're exactly right. And, the Bennett hypothesis is what William Bennett, the former Secretary of Ed under Ronald Reagan, posited several decades ago, that the more that the federal government contributes to student loans, the more that they're willing to lend, the higher tuition rates are going to go up. And actually, there's been research from the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank, that has found this. There's a connection between how much we give as taxpayers in federal student loans and grants and how high tuition goes up, because colleges have no incentive to keep costs down.
Right. And, Chuck and I have talked on this program about trying to find ways to, for instance, require colleges to back their own student loans, right, where they start looking at a return on investment. But in terms of that cost, I mean, what you just described for a parent taking their kid around looking at different colleges, it sounds an awful lot like trying to negotiate a lease on a car lot. I mean, they're pulling the wool over your eyes at every opportunity in one sense.
Well, except that it's more expensive than a car. We're talking about buying a house
Right.
with some of these tuition costs. Now, fortunately, the Trump administration has already taken steps to lower the amount that parents can borrow through what are known as Parent Plus loans. And these loans are a bad deal for families. And we talk about this in a couple of the chapters in the book. And when parents borrow on their child's behalf, with the interest rates and the amount that they can take out, especially as you start to think about graduate school, they could be paying off these loans into retirement in the space of parents. So it can be a very frustrating endeavor at large. But that's only the beginning, right? I mean, once you begin to visit college campuses, as you said, and parents these days are probably starting that process over the summer, right? College, high school juniors are probably shopping as we speak, looking at where their rising seniors is looking to go. Keep an eye out for things like a biased response team, or a office specific for, say, DEI or LGBTQ plus and gender plus studies. One of my colleagues who also wrote a chapter for the book, Adam Kissel, has said, beware of anything that has the word studies after it. Right. If it's anything that's got studies that follows it, it makes you think that is a particular college major that may not be useful to you upon graduation.
Well, and one thing, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but one of my perceptions of the early days, when these government-backed student loans became a thing and colleges started raising prices left and right and backwards, one of the things that I saw initially was they were doing it for things that students would find fun, right? That they were trying to, like, we're bringing concert series, and we're bringing all these, we're building a huge new student center, student union. We're doing all these other things that are meant to engage students. It seems like after a few years, hey, they all ran that arms race, and then now it's turned into this sort of DEI bureaucracy arms race that isn't helping students at all. In fact, I'd make the argument that it's harming them.
You're exactly right. I mean, it really, like anything with the federal government, it may start with good intentions, but then only ratchets one way, and that is up. The student loan program really started with the Higher Education Act under Lyndon Johnson, and as it became wrapped into the GI Bill, which was already in place. Now, of course, we have more than just a GI Bill, right? You have loans for any student who wants it, whether or not they are prepared to go off to college. And that, of course, leaves taxpayers on the hook when you have 1.8 trillion, that's with a T, of student loan debt that is outstanding. And that should give everyone pause about whether or not we should be encouraging every child, regardless of what their academic background is, to go off to school, right? I mean, I think there is a very valid conversation to be had about talking to students about going to technical colleges, going to trade schools, learning something that AI can't replace, right? Like electric repair or construction or plumbing, which may not sound like, the kind of high profile jobs that students may want, but it is a kind of job that will be secure, right? It's a kind of task that actually leads to growth as you progress up the ladder along with these skills.
When it creates a lot of entrepreneurship opportunities, right? You develop those skills, you work for somebody else, you build it up, you buy your own van, you build your own company out of it. A lot of multimillionaires and people who are even becoming billionaires have come out of that route.
You're precisely right. I mean, I think those stories of how people go from being the apprentice to the owner of the company, that's a powerful American success story. And frankly, it's one of the things that makes America so unique, right, in world economies. Today and in the past, I would say, our whole 250-year history, which, by the way, we're celebrating this summer.
Right.
So I think part of what our book gets to is not just discouraging people from going to college, but it's talking about, if you're going to go, what is the purpose? What's the purpose for you, the student? And then what's the purpose for colleges? What are they meant to be delivering? And I mentioned that Larry Arnn from Hillsdale did our foreword for the book, and he talks about this relationship between professors and students that is really at the heart of what college is about, right? There is a deal, there's a relationship where the students are making the sacrifice of time and effort and work, and they're being imparted, they're being delivered a set of skills, knowledge, wisdom, we hope, that will prepare them for any number of different situations they're going to see in life. And we have a couple of other college presidents, including George Harn from Christendom College and Kyle Washut from Wyoming Catholic, which is another school that really focuses their curriculum around work. Right, all of the students at Wyoming Catholic have a work responsibility. So it begins to combine this idea that college is not just about sitting at a desk, right? It's about preparing young people to be adults.
Yeah, you want it to prepare them for success. And tying back to something you said earlier, you're talking about all this debt and the deficit. You alluded to the deficit a lot of these students are now coming into college with. I think it was it's Cal Berkeley that just had a bunch of professors essentially revolt and send a letter to the administration saying you've got to stop admitting these students who can't do basic math, who can't read and write. They're damaging themselves and the institution. I would add something further, that those students are being ripped off by these schools. By admitting them, these schools are ripping those kids off because they're charging them a huge amount of money for something that they and their parents have already paid for in high school. And if they didn't get it there, we better find a different route to get it to them rather than tens of thousands of dollars a year at a university.
You're exactly right. And I think that there's sort of this promise, right, that students would be able to pursue truth when they go to campus, right? I mean, the deal that they feel like they're making is that they would be able to go to college to ask hard questions, to be able to debate topics that they may not be able to have expertise from someone to have that conversation with them somewhere else. But instead, what they're getting, and this is laid out by John Saylor from the Manhattan Institute in his chapter, is that you have professors who, in some cases, we're talking 80%, is probably not a figure that's too high, who are on the left side of the ideological spectrum, either based on their giving history or their voting or any other measure that we can find of how to gauge what the ideological temperature is on campus. And so you're sending these students really into an echo chamber, right? And we have seen from the surveys of students, especially conservative students, that they feel like they're afraid to speak their minds. And for any parent, look, I'm a parent of a college student. I would be furious if my son came to me and said, "Dad, I'm afraid to speak my mind in class because I know what the professor thinks about politics, and he has no interest in hearing what my opinion is."
Well, that is the destruction of education right there. If you can't have open, informed debate, you have no education. There's no such thing. We're going to be coming back with more here in just a moment, folks, from Jonathan Butcher. He is the acting director of the Center for Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation. The new book that he is a contributing author to, Higher Education in America, It's Worse Than You Think, is a must read for folks right now. If you got a kid who's maybe on the, heading off to college, if you are interested, you got a younger kid, or maybe you're a grandparent, you need to check this out. If you are one of the first 5 people right now to go to our DMs on Facebook and ask, just put in Higher Education in America, put that in the tagline. The first 5 people who DM us, we will send you a copy of that book. So be sure to get a hold of that. And you're going to want to make sure you're following the Heritage and Jonathan Butcher. He is doing their folks. They are doing the Lord's work here. I mean, it really is. So follow him at JM_Butcher on X. And last word, if you are not yet subscribed to our podcast, what are you doing? Go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Get subscribed to that podcast. We have tons of good content coming back. And make sure you leave us a 5-star review there, okay? Wherever you get your favorite podcast content, Breaking Battlegrounds is there. We're coming right back. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds, folks. Right now, we're actually on this program talking about education and the problems in higher education, and a lot of those problems are ending up landing on people's wallets for years and years and years after they graduate. Private student loan debt in the United States totals over $300 billion. $45 billion of that is distressed. If you have a distressed or defaulted private student loan that others won't touch, you need to contact Y-Refi today. Y-Refi can provide you with a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. They're not a debt settlement company. They work with each borrower individually, tailor the loan to your specific situation. You will not be calling a faceless call center. This isn't AI. This isn't a call center in India. You're calling someone right here in Arizona, and they will help you get out of this disaster. So give them a call today. You want to make sure, go to yrefi.com. That's YREFY.com. Or give them a call at 888-YREFI-85 and tell them Chuck and Sam sent you. Okay, continuing on now with Jonathan Butcher. He is the acting director of the Center for Education Policy, and Will Skillman, senior research fellow in education policy at the Heritage Foundation. He is a contributor to a fantastic new book, Higher Education in America, It's Worse Than You Think. We hit on some of the elements of that. I want to talk a little bit, because the book is broken up into some different segments, essentially. With they kind of have to go over the full scope of the problem. You've got all these different authors who have contributed to it, some of the brightest minds in conservative thought, especially surrounding education in the country, and just in education in the country. They've broken it up into economic, bureaucratic, and ideological portions. And we've talked a little bit about the economic and the bureaucratic. Jonathan, I wanted to touch on some of the ideology and some of the impacts that's having, because we touched this a little bit. But when you make campus a place where half the country isn't comfortable, are you achieving the mission of higher education?
Well, most certainly not. I mean, I think one of the incidents that really should give everyone pause about what's happening on college campuses is when Jewish students were chased into the attic of the Cooper Union Library in New York a few years ago after October 7th by rioters. There's a great chapter in our book by Kenneth Marcus, who's the president of the Brandeis Center, talks about the threats to Jewish students on campus and what lawmakers really need to be paying attention to. They should be dealing with law enforcement on campus when students break the law, right? This shouldn't be something where they create a kangaroo court and have, some university official handle discipline. Well, this is more than just discipline. This is threatening students, very lives.
Yeah, I was about to say it's worse than a kangaroo court. Because it is, it's a Soviet show trial version of a kangaroo court, because it excuses almost any act if the actor can claim to be doing so for the, quote, right ideological reasons, and condemns any act, even if they're not actually, broken policy or the law, if they are a conservative or acting from a view that administration dislikes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why there was all of the back and forth between Columbia and Harvard in this second Trump administration. I mean, the fact is that just because you're on a private school campus, say in the case of Harvard, you're not exempt from the law, right? I mean, the First Amendment may apply differently on private college campuses, but most private colleges adopt some form, right, of free speech protections, except when they don't.
You're
and
right.
That's why, when students claim that they're just acting in free speech when they're, say, preventing a Jewish student from getting to class, that's not free speech, right? That is assault, right? That is literally harassment. If you interfere with someone else's ability to obtain an education, that is the definition of harassment on a college campus. And if state lawmakers aren't going to enforce it, well, then it's going to be up to federal lawmakers to do something.
Absolutely. Now, one of the other elements in the book you talked about that is talked about a little bit, and I wonder if you can get into this, is how universities have sort of been geared, and we've seen the same thing in K-12. Our education system has now been designed around young women. and maybe to the fairly significant detriment of young men.
Yes, the chapter in our book that discusses this is by Inez Stepman with the Independent Women's Forum. And she writes that, look, the numbers are somewhere around 60-40, right, is the ratio of women to men on many college campuses, which means more women earning degrees, more women who are ready to climb the ladder of salary increases, right, compared to men. And there was news just this past week about the decrease in men in the workforce. And so we've got a system here where two things are happening. You've got men who are not receiving the kind of education that they need to go off and be leaders in the workforce, just like we need women to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the men aren't getting the same opportunities. But then also, realistically, women are, and this is what Inez says, they are postponing marriage and family. And, for some, that may be their choice, right? They may decide that that's something they're ready to wait till their 30s. But in other cases, they may be putting it off so that that dream of having a family and getting married might become out of reach, or it may be put off so far that it's difficult for them to have a large family.
And you know what? Look, it's not popular, and I've got B in the studio. I'm going to put her on the line right now. But the fact of the matter is that generations, centuries, millennia of sociology play into this. B, let me ask you a question. You're a young woman.
Mm-hmm.
Any of your friends eager to marry a man who makes less money than them?
Unfortunately, no. I think a lot of women look at that with this day and age and where things are at and wanting to buy a house and the American dream shifting to be a little harder.
It's just the thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so these kind of decisions that are made and the impacts that are coming from them that you're describing, Jonathan, they have really major real-world consequences, because what they're doing for young women like B and her generation is they're narrowing the pool of available men to a degree that makes it a societal problem, especially when we have declining birth rates across the world.
No, that's right. We're well below a replacement rate now. And of course, this conversation circles back to ideology, because these, quote, gender studies departments that we were talking about earlier, I can tell you they're probably not kind to men, right? They're not kind.
I know. I had one of those professors when I was in college, and she was horrid.
And look, I mean, we can give criticism where it's due. I mean, the idea is not that male leaders have never made mistakes. That's not the question.
No.
The question is it all wrong, right? And I think that is what is being depicted by some of these radical studies programs.
Well,
right?
and
they're depicting the world as set up against women, right, who are always the victim.
Right. And we have shifted the balance in such a way that it's no longer a balance once again. I mean, it has shifted from one pole to another, and the problems it creates may be a different set of problems, but they're still problems.
Yeah, most certainly. And look, I mean, my wife does not ever like being told that she is always the victim. And she will be the first to tell me when I get out of line with my opinions. And so, I think those are the kinds of relationships that we want people to be prepared to enter into, right? You want to set people up not to be cowed into intimidation, but we also don't want to tell them that marriage is a bad idea, or that marriage takes away happiness, or that having children is something that's only a burden.
Absolutely.
Right? When the truth is, I mean, when you have kids, that's going to change your life. I mean, marriage and having children is something that, I mean, it changes you.
B was snapping right along with your wife in here. Jonathan Butcher, thank you so much for joining us today. How do folks follow your work?
You can find me on Twitter at @JM_Butcher, and then information about our book is on heritage.org.
Fantastic. Jonathan Butcher, thank you so much for joining us. We welcome you back to the program anytime. Fantastic interview. Folks, stay tuned. We've got more great content coming.
To run a successful business, you need one thing: customers. And how do you get customers? You get them through advertising. You get them through lead generation. But what happens if the leads don't exist, or they don't have valid contact information? This is a familiar story all businesses deal with. Then they call these leads who don't exist, or they're bad numbers, or they're not in their service area. Argus 101 verifies every lead before your team picks up the phone. It's a real person in your area and a neighborhood that matches your ideal customer. Your team only calls people worth calling, thus saving you money. Free trial at argus101.com. That's ARGUS101.com. Help your business expand today. Go to argus101.com. ARGUS101.com. Hello, Breaking Battlegrounds listeners. Did you know that private student loan debt in the United States totals about $300 billion? That's with a B. About $45 billion of that is labeled as distressed, which means people are behind on payments. Why Refi, who is a proud sponsor of our show, refinances this distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They don't even care what your credit score is. They provide you with a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. Why Refi is not a debt settlement company. They work with each borrower individually to tailor a loan that meets your specific financial situation and helps you pay this loan off. So, folks, if you would like to learn more how to put your mind at ease and your budget back on track, call Why Refi at 877-400-9989 and tell them Sam and Chuck sent you. You can go and look into them at YREFI, YREFY.com to get more information. They will help you reduce your monthly payment and guarantee interest rates under 6%, ensuring financial relief to you as you pay off your private student loan. Jump on that website or call them today.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name, .vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Chuck is off in the Great Blue Yonder today, so you are stuck with me, Sam Stone. But fortunately, you get to hear from our next guest up here, one of our favorites on this program, Scot Mussi. He's president of the Arizona Free Enterprise Club, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing pro-growth, limited government agenda in Arizona. For folks who don't know, they have been one of the bulwarks against leftist encroachment in this state, and should be a model for every single state to replicate that organization. Scot Mussi, welcome back to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sam.
So you guys have been out front on a lot of the fight around ESAs and other things. You know, a lot of ballot initiatives coming into Arizona being, for or against. A lot of money now in this cycle, maybe more than I've ever seen before, is coming in from outside the state. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, and people have probably seen this nationally because the Trump administration just recently created a new tax credit program to expand school choice. School choice has been a national fight. The unions, the teachers' unions, are doing everything they can to try to put the genie back in the bottle, because the reality is that parents and families love school choice. They love the idea of being able to send their kids wherever they want to. And here in Arizona, we have some of the most robust school choice options for parents, whether it be going to charters, private schools. And then a few years ago, we set the benchmark on implementing universal school choice. We have the Universal Empowerment Scholarship Program. You can send your kid wherever you want, public, private. You want to take money, it follows the child. Well, the unions hate that. It's an existential threat. Parents are finding that they love the idea of being able to find an alternative for their child. And so they're spending millions of dollars trying to go around the country to shut these programs down. And that's what they're trying to do here in Arizona. A couple months ago, they launched a ballot initiative funded by the Washington, D.C. Teachers Union. They've already poured $5 million into Arizona, trying to send a measure to the ballot that would effectively kill our school choice program here in Arizona, kill the ESA program, which right now, Sam, is being used by over 100,000 students. 100,000 students now are enrolled in our school choice program here in the state, and the unions are trying to shut that down and do it via the ballot initiative process.
Well, and I want to just hit on two quick points there to make. Those 100,000 students, how does their performance compare to the students who are still in our government-run schools?
The performance for those children, fantastic. And the best barometer you have for that is the parents love the opportunity to be able to find a school that they want to send their child to. So just on overall performance, they're happy, and satisfaction. And then the one thing, Sam, I always love to point out about this is that part of it is the performance. People want their kids getting the best education possible. But the other part of that is also finding a learning environment that works for their children. Many of these kids that are that have a scholarship, are in the ESA program. These are kids that were bullied. These are kids that were in environments that morale was really, really low. And so now their kids are thriving. Their kids are happier than they've ever been. And then it can't be forgotten that over 20% of the kids that are using school choice have learning disabilities or special needs students.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you went there. I'm sorry to cut you off. I want to jump down that rabbit hole a little more, because I always said that was the one good argument that the anti-school choice crowd had, was saying, well, all these public schools, these government schools are required to educate kids with special needs. And there was a limited market in private education, charters and so forth for those kids. That's not the case anymore. Those kids are choosing charter and ESA options at rates equivalent to every other group of students now, aren't they?
Absolutely. And you're talking about a situation where it can be really expensive oftentimes for public schools to even provide the services needed for special needs students. There are now private schools tailored to specifically helping out children that need specialty programs, specialty curriculum. It's a win-win. It's a win-win for those students. It's a win-win for taxpayers. All of this is saving taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. And the reality is, for example, like with this initiative, they want to go in, and there are millions of dollars that have been awarded in scholarships to these special needs children. Under this initiative, they want to take those scholarships away. And the reason is they want to funnel that money back into the schools, because the union in Washington, D.C., the union bosses want that money. They want to control the money. And so They want to take these scholarships away from these special needs kids and funnel it right back into the unions to benefit them.
It's absolutely atrocious. We have just 30 seconds left here. We're going to be coming back with more from Scot Mussi in just a moment, folks, so stay tuned there. You definitely want to follow the Arizona Free Enterprise Club. They are doing amazing work. Scott, how do people stay in touch with you and all the work you're doing?
Easiest way, visit our website, azfree.org. You can go right there, sign up, get our information if you want to get involved or engage. We have an active grassroots program in this state, over 15,000 activists throughout Arizona. You want to sign up and get involved, that's how you can do it.
And that's how you make a difference. Folks, Breaking Battlegrounds coming right back. All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're going to be continuing on now with Scot Mussi, president of the Arizona Free Enterprise Club. And Scott, when we went to break, we're talking about education quite a bit. your group also is highly involved in the 26 elections, the upcoming elections here in Arizona. Arizona is likely to be probably the most watched swing state in this coming election. We have a couple of competitive seats. There really aren't a handful. There aren't more than a handful nationwide of competitive House seats. What are you guys seeing on the ground in terms of the enthusiasm on both sides of the aisle and in terms of the early direction heading into this November?
Yeah, there has been a lot of concern about whether or not there would be enthusiasm among Republicans and conservative voters. The good news is everything we're seeing through our own polling is that enthusiasm is off the charts. And so that is good news. The part of that, though, is we do have to translate that into actual turnout. And so that will be key, making sure that we're getting our voters to show up, because there's no doubt you're seeing this in the special elections throughout the country. Democrats are motivated. They are showing up to vote in these low turnout elections. We have to make sure that when it comes to the midterm, we get our voters to show up. And so we're hyper focused on that. And then when it comes to issues that people care about, not surprisingly, cost of living, the economy still is the number one issue. But number two, here in Arizona, being a border state, is still immigration, especially with conservative voters and conservative leading independents. They really care about the border security issues. They care about safety in our communities. And so highlighting that and making sure those voters are remembering to show up and vote to protect our borders, because the left is just, the minute they take control or they're able to keep Katie Hobbs as governor and Chris Mays as attorney general, they're doing everything they can to unwind and fight back against the Trump administration and everything we've done to secure our borders. So making sure we show up to vote, having an agenda that we're keeping costs low, keeping borders secure is what's going to be key to winning this election.
Well, and for a lot of our listeners who, maybe here in Arizona and obviously on the air in Florida, or just listening to the podcast, making sure that Trump's second term is not completely sabotaged is a pretty critical mission. What's going to happen if we lose the House? Like what happens to President Trump if we lose the U.S. House?
Oh, for impeachment trials. I mean, they're not even pretending that won't be a cornerstone to their agenda. They're going to want to gum him up in investigation and in impeachments for the next 2 years, and then use the budget, the federal budget, the everything they've been hearing about, these continuing resolutions, everything else. They're going to use every opportunity to roll back all of the wins that President Trump has been able to secure in his first 2 terms. And so the most important thing about keeping our Congress, keeping the House of Representatives, is making sure he isn't bogged down in endless investigations for the remainder of his term. And so more than anything else, that's an important reason. And then secondly, as in Arizona, as I talked about before, being a border state, making sure that that President Trump can continue to keep our border secure, keep the fentanyl off our streets, making sure that our Border Patrol and ICE have the resources they need to make sure that we're keeping the bad guys out of here. We're arresting criminal aliens. Heck, it just came out just late last year. Criminal alien went to a school here in the Phoenix area, was able to, went in there and was sexually assaulting children. Finally was arrested, but this was a criminal alien. It's been on our street for years. Should have been off our street years ago. Years ago, should have been taken off our street. Finally was caught, but should have never happened. And Katie Hobbs and other Democrats have been allowing that type of lawlessness to occur here in Arizona.
Well, and one of the big issues, I mean, a lot of folks maybe don't pay enough attention to the attorney general's race in their state. And you mentioned Chris Mays, the Arizona attorney general, George Soros-style non-prosecutor, as I always say. But it's not just the crimes that they don't prosecute. It's also the fact that they spend all their time trying to enact political lawsuits to tamp down the opposition instead of enforcing the laws. So it's a double whammy.
It totally is. And in the case of Chris Mays here in Arizona, she has a record of losing that is unrivaled across the country. Taking these political cases as you talked about, heck, it was just announced today, the Arizona Supreme Court rejected her appeal to take the alternate elector case. She's still trying to go and weaponize our court system to target the alternate elector slate that was sent to Congress here in Arizona as some political vendetta against them. And she's been losing at every turn. I mean, she continues to fail, but she sees that as an opportunity to both fundraise off these type of lawsuits, and also as a way to motivate their Democrat base to get people to turn out. She doesn't. The part of me wonders if she even cares that she's losing so badly on this, because I think she just sees it as an opportunity to raise her name profile among hardcore Democrat activists.
Well, and obviously a lot of politics has devolved for a long time into just theater, right? But what are the odds? It's difficult to knock off incumbents. You're close on these races. What do you think the odds are? What kind of odds would you give Republicans to take the AG and the governor's seat this year?
I do think it's actually better than 50-50 here in Arizona.
Nice.
And some of that stems from the fact that both Katie Hobbs and Chris Mays are not very well liked and surprisingly not well known. You would think as sitting incumbents, they would have higher name ID than they do, but poll after poll shows that their name ID isn't as high as what you would think it would be. On the flip side, if they have something going for them, as you mentioned, they are incumbents. Incumbents will have a money advantage because they're already in place. Mm-hmm. And in the case of both of our top two electeds here in Arizona, Katie Hobbs and Chris Mays, they've been kind of out of the public view. I think it's by design. They kind of hide from the public. They're not very good politicians. Katie Hobbs is one of the most incompetent and scandal-plagued governors in America. She's hoping people don't find out the fact that she's actually under criminal investigation by the Attorney General here in Arizona for a pay-to-pay bribery scheme. A lot of voters don't know about that, and she's trying to keep it hidden. It's going to be our job making sure voters know that we have a governor that's just presided over billions in fraud. She's used the governor's office as a favor factory for political friends. They give her money to her slush funds. She turns around and hands them sweet government contracts and other payouts. She sees it as a way to enrich herself. She loves having lobbyists pay for her vacations to Mexico and other places. Once voters hear that record, a good chance to beat her. But it's going to be our job to make sure people know about that record going into November.
Well, and this podcast is national. Obviously, we are on the air in Florida as well. Do Republicans need to get more strategic like Democrats? I mean, the one thing I've kind of been impressed about Democrats is they're very focused on where they put their money and their effort. So they're not chasing. I don't want to stomp on anyone's dreams here, but I people have been talking about Spencer Pratt and Steve Hilton for a while. Go look at the numbers. Neither of them are going to win in November. But we have some races here in Arizona that will change the course of the country. Do Republicans need to get more strategic about where we put our cash?
Absolutely, especially from a national perspective, and making sure they're investing in not just the right races, but the right infrastructure. That's been something that's been, I think, frustrating here for us here in Arizona, is that the left pours millions and millions of dollars nationally into Arizona. We talked about the ESA initiative that they're trying to put on the ballot to kill school choice here in Arizona. The unions nationally are pouring millions into Arizona to do that. We sometimes don't see that here from the conservative side of the aisle, with the national money coming in at that same intensity. I think the opportunity exists to turn Arizona into the next Florida. We look at Florida now. It was just 8 years ago that it was considered a purple swing state.
And it didn't cost that much.
Arizona right back there.
It didn't cost that much to do. You just have to be consistent, and then they have to fund groups like yours and Marissa Hamilton's Easy AZ. We only have a couple of them, but you bring up it's a critical point, because every area, whether it's elections, whether it is law, whether it is, border issues, all this, Democrats have a handful of groups funded full-time, staffed full-time, year-round, every single year with national dollars, and they're putting their thumb on the scale, and we don't have a counter to that other than the scrappiness of people like you and a handful of other grassroots leaders.
Yeah, we're catching up to the other side, but they are well funded. In fact, late last year, we issued a report. We called it the Liberal NGO Syndicate here in Arizona, mapping out the money flowing into Arizona to fund these liberal organizations. And it turns out, last campaign cycle, hundreds of millions of dollars flowed to organizations operating here in Arizona, working year-round to try to turn our state blue, and doing all the things that you're describing, engaging in lawfare, engaged in our legislative process, active ground game. They have it operating year-round because they know all of that can be leveraged election season towards electing the candidates that they want to get elected. And so it's not an accident. It's organized. It's well funded. We need to match that intensity. And here in Arizona, the Free Enterprise Club, along with a lot of our coalition partners, are working to flip that back and make sure that we not only have the infrastructure to defeat them, but turn Arizona into the next Florida.
I have always said $1 in January is worth 10 in November.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
and that infrastructure makes campaigning cheaper.
Right.
People often forget that is when you talk about get out the vote operations, GOTV is a lot cheaper. Making sure your voters are showing up to vote is a lot cheaper if you have sustained infrastructure in place rather than trying to ramp it up at the last second every campaign season.
Yep. We have just a couple of minutes left here, Scott, about 3 minutes. I want to hit on with one more topic with you, something both you and I are very focused on. That's municipal budgets, counties, all these things. They're growing their budgets like crazy. People aren't paying attention. They are just hammering the public with taxes, fees, and other little nickel and dimes.
Oh, in Arizona, we're getting pummeled by municipalities with their endless tax and fee increases. And no, it's not because that's a problem with declining revenues. It's actually just the opposite.
Yeah, they all have record revenue. They all have record revenue. Yeah.
It's all doubled. It's doubled in the last 6-7 years. Revenues have doubled for cities and towns here in Arizona, but they have no spending restraint. They're increasing spending at a faster rate than the revenues the record revenues that are coming in, and they don't care. And their solution to every problem is we'll just enact another fee or tax increase. The city of Tempe, one of home of Arizona State University, one of the larger cities here in Arizona, is looking to do another sales tax increase. People are struggling to make ends meet. Affordability is a huge problem. Voters know that. Taxpayers know that. And the cities here go, nope, we're just going to do another one. In Tempe, half-cent sales tax increase. Same time they're asking for this, it just got uncovered that they spent $2 million on a dumb sign over Mill Avenue, the main road in downtown road here in Tempe. And they're going to spend another $40 million on what they're calling a refurbishment of downtown. Just millions of dollars getting wasted on pet projects, on patronage projects downtown. And their solution is, we're running a deficit. Let's just do another sales tax.
Well, and for folks who don't know, I mean, obviously Tempe, the heart of it is ASU, which a lot of that is tax exempt, right? And they have lived off the taxes created by these businesses around them. But they're reaching a point like Tempe has a large number of auto dealerships. I've talked to the GM from one of those dealerships who said they're looking at selling the plot and going somewhere else, getting further outside of the metro core, because the sales tax rate, every 1% on you do 1% on a $50,000 car, that's enough to really adjust a payment. There are going to be real world impacts, these increases.
That's when the tipping points occurred. Before that, all the stuff you don't see are all the small businesses and homeowners that are fleeing these locations and moving out, getting out of these cities, moving to further out into suburban, exurban areas to escape these crushing tax burdens. Where these cities they assume that people are just captive taxpayers and they can do whatever they want to them. They can continue to pummel them with their tax increases, and they have to leave. And then you get what you're describing: the larger businesses, the auto dealerships. They hit a breaking point. And then that's when the whole system is grinding to a halt and it's breaking down.
And it is. Thank you so much, Scot Mussi. Folks, follow AZ Free at azfree.org. They are doing amazing, amazing work. Scott, always a pleasure to talk with you. Everyone out there, if you're not already, go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote, sign up for our podcast, sign up for our Substack, get all that extra content, and make sure you give us that 5-star review. B's giving me a double thumbs up for remembering that one. Breaking Battlegrounds will be back on the air next week. Thank you so much for joining us. For all of us here, we love you. We'll see you.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
Hello, Breaking Battlegrounds listeners. Did you know that private student loan debt in the United States totals about $300 billion? That's with a B. About $45 billion of that is labeled as distressed, which means people are behind on payments. Why Refi, who is a proud sponsor of our show, refinances this distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They don't even care what your credit score is. They provide you with a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. Why Refi is not a debt settlement company. They work with each borrower individually to tailor a loan that meets your specific financial situation and helps you pay this loan off. So, folks, if you would like to learn more how to put your mind at ease and your budget back on track, call Why Refi at 877-400-9989 and tell them Sam and Chuck sent you. You can go and look into them at Why Refi, YREFY.com to get more information. They will help you reduce your monthly payment and guarantee interest rates under 6%, ensuring financial relief to you as you pay off your private student loan. Jump on that website or call them today.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest today, Lou Perez, is a regular with our program. He's developing some features for us here, but he sent us in a story. I keep getting more and more baffled and amazed and disgusted by what Canada is doing with MAID, their medical assistance in dying program. Lou, I don't even want to get into this story. Tell us this is so insane. I don't even know where to begin. Tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, so, Canada is known for universal health care and now universal death care.
Universal weight care in the meantime, too.
Yeah.
You can wait to die.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine that? You're waiting, you're like, oh, man, can we just get this over with?
Yes.
So MAID, like you said, the medical assistance in dying program, over the years has taken, I believe it's something close to like 80,000 lives. And this story that I read in the National Post is particularly egregious because it involves the life of a 45-year-old man named Thomas Dillon, who met up with Dr. James McLean, I believe that's how you pronounce it, outside of a Tim Hortons in Ontario. And anyone who's been to Canada knows that there's a Tim Hortons on every block.
Okay, and for the folks who haven't been to Canada, Tim Hortons is not a hospital, right?
No. Tim Hortons is not a hospital unless the only cure you're looking for are delicious donuts and tea and coffee.
Well, that has cured lots over the year. I'm not going to lie. I mean, you know, a delicious donut and a cup of coffee it is a cure for many things.
Yeah, and I think this might be the worst branding opportunity ever for Tim Hortons that they're now going to be associated with medical assistance in dying. So
Tim Hortons, come get your last donut.
Yeah, and make it worth it, for sure. So this doctor assessed Thomas Dillon. He's 45. He apparently suffered from inflammatory bowel disease and had a history of mental health issues.
Wait a minute. They killed a guy for having wet farts? Because IBS is pretty much like...
Well, I mean, I think anybody, there have been times when I've had, it's so bad where I'm like, I wish someone would take my life. But, thankfully it didn't persist and I didn't go through with it.
You got treated like an American?
I got, you know what? I just started eating more beef. Like that was it. That's how Americans deal with every problem. So,
Well, that is FDA approved these days.
yeah, exactly. So, unfortunately, outside of this, Tim Hortons, the doctor did the assessment, and I just want you to imagine, like you go to see a physician, not at an office, outside of a Tim Hortons, and he chats with you a little bit, and he's like, "Yeah, man, you know what? After talking to you, I think you should definitely go through with it." And then he drives you to go die. So it's like a doctor, and he's also your taxi driver, Uber driver. And what
Did he
made
get to go
this,
through the drive-through first? Maple
well, that's
bar?
what I wanted to know. I wanted to know,
Yeah.
like, did he partake of Tim Hortons, knowing that he has IBS? Did he, spend one last time in that Tim Hortons bathroom, and
Yeah.
leave his mark for generations to come? But we don't know. Well, we didn't find out that part of the story.
They
And
leave
what,
all the good stuff out of these reports.
yeah, and they didn't tell the guy's family that it was
Wait.
happening either.
Wait,
Yeah.
they didn't tell his family they were going to kill him?
No, no, they did not tell his family they were going to kill him, and apparently the family would have had a problem with it. I would imagine, and
I would
the
hope
family
so.
seemed very concerned for their loved one and wanted to get him help. And unfortunately, it went the way that it did. And you try to imagine, doctors take an oath of do no harm, but it seems like up north uh, that's kind of been thrown to the wayside when it comes to assisted
So
dying.
actually, I think from one of our other guests that we had on here a while ago who was investigating this, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the history as it happens guy, I don't think the doctors in Canada even take that oath anymore. Like he said, they don't take the Hippocratic Oath anymore.
Wow, that would be very shocking on a number of levels. But I'm sure if they got rid of the Hippocratic Oath, they're definitely doing like a land acknowledgement to make up for it,
Right, right.
beforehand. Like, this assisted suicide is being done on land that belonged to blah blah blah. Because you don't want to offend too many people. But to Canada's credit, give them a little bit of credit. This doctor did get in trouble for doing this. So he apparently agreed to 6 months minimum supervision. So he will undergo ongoing review of all of his made patient charts and mandatory professional education related to the program, consent documentation, all of that. So it seems like a slap on the wrist, and
That's
it
barely a slap on the
yeah.
wrist. That's like a feather on the wrist.
Well, both of those. I think if you get a slap on the wrist or a feather on the wrist, you could do the MAID program in Canada. They'll
Well,
take care
that
of you for
definitely
that.
qualifies under MAID for immediate termination because, that kind of damage can last a lifetime.
Yeah, and I didn't realize just how big of a problem this was, and how bad it was getting. I came across a documentary from a couple of years ago called "Better Off Dead," and I'm saying it that way because there's a question mark after "Better Off Dead," and there's a journalist named Liz Carr who is handicapped, and she goes to see a Canadian doctor who takes part in euthanasia and has helped kill over 400 people. And if you want to creep yourself out for the weekend, go watch this documentary and this scene in particular. The doctor that assists people in their dying is just like you'd expect it. And the office itself, where some of these deaths actually occur, it's just an office with clutter, and the people are sitting on like a couch while it's happening, and the only thing that they have to
Oh,
see is this creepy doctor and maybe a tiny fan that's
oh
kind of
God.
blowing. So it's really morbid, and I don't know what things are going to look like 5 years down the road in Canada.
Canada
Further
is
north.
going off the rails in a way I can't even comprehend. I mean, this kind of stuff is barbarianism.
Yeah, and I think after losing the medal to the United States in men's hockey, I thought we'd expect to see a lot more of this happen.
Well, considering that mental health now qualifies you to have the government end your life in Canada, I did sort of expect a giant wave of deaths from that loss.
Yeah. And so that's the bittersweet, edge, double-edged sort of victory.
This stuff's amazing. This stuff is amazing and horrifying. Lou Perez, thank you so much once again. We always love having you on the program. Folks, stay in touch with him on X at Lou Perez. Breaking Battlegrounds will be back in just a moment. We have one more great interview for you. Chuck is handling that one. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest is Dr. John Lee. He is the senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. He's also an adjunct professor at the University of Sydney. He is the foremost expert in Chinese political economy. I've heard rave reviews in the foreign policy circles in D.C. about John. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be with you.
Thank you very much. So you wrote a great piece out that was in The Hill titled, After the Trump-Xi Summit, China, Not America, is on the Back Foot. Tell our audience what you mean by that.
I've been reading a lot of particularly American commentaries about how the Trump administration is degrading American power, that China has the Trump administration where it wants it, and everything from Iran to the summit that Xi and Trump just had is just further evidence that the Trump administration is putting America in a worse and worse place with respect to China. I wrote that article because I think it's completely wrong. I think Xi Jinping is the one that's completely discombobulated and confused by Trump. But more than that, there are some strategic undercurrents that the Trump administration is pushing, which is very bad for China. So if you're sitting in Beijing now and you're asking yourself the question, are we in a better position strategically with respect to America now compared to 1.5 years ago? I think the answer is no. I think the United States is in a much better position and China is in a far poorer position than it was a year and a half ago.
Well, I agree with you, and that's why your article resonated with me. Trump could literally go, there's the old joke, Trump could cure cancer tomorrow. And the media and those on the left would just say, well, he's done something to profit from it, or whatever the case may be, right? But when you look at what he's done in Venezuela, what's happening in Cuba, what's happening in Central and South America with the elections, what's going on with Iran, I think he's changed the trajectory in the world. I think he's put Russia and China on their heels. Am I wrong on that?
I think you're correct. And in some ways, I've got the advantage that I'm not an American, so I'm not subject to the political conversation that's taking place in DC and other parts of America. I'm neither a Republican nor Democrat, so I'm just looking at America's place in the world with respect to China. And I agree with you from the point of view that you think about time just before Trump got back into power for the second time. There was a narrative, quite a correct narrative, that China was calling the geostrategic shots, using its partners of convenience, such as Iran and Venezuela, to create chaos in the Middle East, in Asia, in South America, and in Europe. There was a perception that American material power was declining. I think under Trump, the reindustrialization and rearming agenda that the Trump administration has is certainly a reversal of the decline of American power. And very importantly, and I say this as an ally of the United States, there was a correct perception that American allies were becoming weaker and less formidable, and that we were existing in a fairly feckless alliance system. America still had lots of allies, but allies weren't actually pulling their weight. Now, the sum of the alliance or the sum of the material power of allies obviously matters. And what Trump has done in his own brutal way, he has forced allies to take their strategic and military interests seriously and to rearm. So if you're sitting in Beijing now, if you're Xi Jinping, the world now not only looks more precarious than it did 18 months ago, but the ball is no longer in your court. You've now got an American president who seems to be calling the shots and, yes, making some mistakes, but the ball is now in the American court, not in the Chinese court. So if I was Xi, I'd be far more uncomfortable than I was just a short time ago.
You're a foreign policy expert. Could Trump have handled this any other way than his rough and tumble communications? Because is there any other way to grab your allies by the lapels and say, we're in trouble? We have to rearm. We have to focus on these things, and we have to focus on these threats, and the old ways that worked for 50 years aren't working for us now. Is there any other way he could have done than just be his gruff self?
This sounds like a controversial thing to say, particularly coming from an American ally. But there are times when you have to coerce allies, not just adversaries, but also allies. If you look at Europe, it's been the mission of multiple American presidents for the last 20 years, more than that, really, to get Europe to take its own defense seriously. If you look at Europe's situation, their GDP is 10 times the size of Russia's, yet Russia intimidates Europe. That doesn't make sense. If you look at Asia, Asia has got used to riding on American security guarantees, pursuing economic growth at all costs, including with China. And so you have a situation where when you have decades of that kind of mindset becoming entrenched, yes, as an ally, it's not comfortable to have a president like Donald Trump threaten your security guarantees. And of course, there are things that could have been said better, but fundamentally, allies had to be coerced to some extent to pick up the slack. President Trump has done it in his own way. I think the question allies have now is what comes after. If allies do what is asked of them, is Donald Trump not just a destroyer convention, but a builder of new institutions and new arrangements? And if he can do the latter, then I'd consider him a great president. If he doesn't do the latter, he's been a very effective president at addressing mistakes, but he really also has to now look beyond the coercion of allies to indicate to allies where he wants to get to in the longer term.
One thing I think that he is not getting enough credit for, and he will in 10, 20 years, is how he's focused like a laser beam on critical minerals. Could you explain to our audience how he has changed that narrative internationally? Because China controlled it. They could blackmail anybody anytime with it. I think it alarms him. I know some people who work in the administration focusing on this issue, and they said he is focused like a laser beam on it because he refuses to have the United States blackmailed by anybody. How has his focus on critical minerals changed the international economy and so forth?
Back in 2010, there was a dispute between the Japanese and the Chinese over Japanese controlled islands called the Senkakus. And the Chinese used a reduction in the flow of critical minerals to force Japan to compromise. That was 2010 and it went up to 2012. So that was more than 10 years ago. That was 14 years ago. So the Chinese, who now control around 90+% of production and refinement of critical minerals that go into almost every modern product that you can think of, we were given a warning 14 years ago and nothing was done about it. The Chinese continue to control global supply, even though we knew there was a critical minerals vulnerability, and the Chinese had shown that they would use that against other countries for coercive purposes. No one did anything about it. And I would say that to President Trump's credit in the second term, he has elevated that as a priority. But more than that, he has thrown significant amounts of money. He has even coerced allies and other friendly economies to get on board with producing safer and more secure critical mineral supply chains. And ultimately, if you want to compete and negotiate on your terms with a country like China, you can't have those immense vulnerabilities that the Chinese have deliberately been cultivating over a couple of decades. So I would say that Trump is the first president to seriously address this issue, to devote resources to this issue, and to harness the power of the private sector to remove this vulnerability. Now, the hard work still has to be done, but pretty significant progress has been made. And I would bet that in 3 or 4 years, the United States and a handful of friendly economies will be in a far better place on this issue than it would have been otherwise.
What's amazing is it took him coming in a second term to focus on it. Like you said, this happened 12, 14 years ago. China showed their hand, how they handle this. Why would that not scare Japan more, or the United States or Europe or Australia more? Why would that not frighten them more that they did that?
I call it a complacency that took root in the 1990s and early 2000s, and that was that geopolitics doesn't matter anymore. There are differences, but you can kind of sort them out. And what you really want to do is just produce things in the most efficient way possible. It doesn't matter who produces it. Everyone benefits. And that mindset has been around a long time. And if you think about the blowback against the Trump administration with his trade policies, the blowback is as strong as it is because Trump is basically taking on 3 decades of what you would call neoliberal economic orthodoxy. And that is that security doesn't really matter. Like security is not priced into what is valuable. That's why no one's done anything about it. The second thing I would say, and this applies to American presidents, you've got to want to genuinely compete and win.
Yes.
American presidents are not voted to be nice guys. I mean, let's be blunt about that.
Right.
They voted such that they put their country and hopefully their allies in a better position. Now, everyone has gone through a character assassination of President Trump, but the one thing you can say is that he takes material power seriously, and he wants to win, and he wants to preserve American primacy. If you want to do all those things, critical minerals is an essential element or pillar of achieving those objectives. So I would say, to his credit, he has focused on that in a way that no other president has, but that comes from his basic mindset, which is not a comfortable mindset for his opponents, but it's a mindset which basically wants to win and to maintain American primacy.
We're with John Lee. He is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, and he is a foremost expert on the Chinese political economy. Trump has renewed the Monroe Doctrine. Has that shocked China?
Yes, because China was used to an America that played a fairly benign global role. And it was used to an America that wasn't prepared to take tough choices to secure its periphery. Think about the Venezuela action. It was as much about China as anything else. China was establishing a beachhead right on the doorstep of the United States. And for several administrations, no one had done anything about that. So this has shocked China because China had got used to the United States that was not up for the fight, that was complacent, that was managing what the Chinese hoped would be a graceful American decline. And then Donald Trump comes in for the second term and quite abruptly upends that carefully well-laid plan that the Chinese have, and a Monroe Doctrine, or the new Trump Doctrine, if whatever you want to call it, that's part of it. I mean, China has the same thing. It wants to secure its periphery. It can't because of American allies in Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, and Philippines, and so on. But the United States can secure its periphery because it has a happier geography. It can actually ensure that its immediate periphery is safe from enemy influence or adversarial influence, and that's essentially what I think the administration's doing. Now, from that basis, then you can project strength and you can project power, but you can't do that if your periphery is increasingly under threat.
That's right. So let's talk Iran briefly here. What do you think? How would you define a win for the United States regarding the Iran situation? I have always viewed this 2 ways. Regarding the United States, being able to say you set them back a decade or more on nuclear ambitions and reduce their conventional armaments would be a victory for the United States. But for Israel and for the Islamic people, the Iranian people, it would be regime change. I think the problem is, which Trump is finding out, I don't think Trump has the votes to keep funding the war. And the media here is against it because, well, it's Trump. Trump's bad. So therefore, I can't see the good in this at all. What do you view as here the next 30 days as a win for the United States on that, and a win for the world, frankly?
Look, let's think of a realistic worst case scenario for the United States.
Okay.
In the current negotiations with Iran, and the worst case is either that Iran continues to fight as it has, or Trump is forced to conclude a stronger version of the Iran deal, which Obama signed 10 or so years ago. But except this time, I think the Americans are in a stronger position than they were before. But under either of those scenarios, that is a kind of nuclear deal of some sort, or Iran continues to fight, the United States is still in a better position than it was before, and Iran is still in a worse position. And let me tell you why. An argument has taken place amongst a lot of critics of the current administration that when Trump attacked Iran in February this year, along with Israel, it was a war of choice. That Trump didn't have to do it. It was either a foolish mistake, a vainglorious conceit, whatever you want to call it. That's actually not true, because if you look at the facts, and once again, I say this not as a Republican or Democrat, but as someone who analyzes geopolitics. If you look at the situation, say, in January 2026, Iran was channeling resources to create weapons, particularly ballistic missiles, that within a year and a half would have overwhelmed the defenses of the Gulf states. So by 2027, if nothing was done, Iran probably would have about 8,000 ballistic missiles. That would have been enough to overwhelm the air defenses of the Gulf states, which would allow Iran an enormously coercive capability over its American regional allies. The second thing is Iran has nuclear material that has been enriched to 60%. And 60% doesn't sound that serious, but when you get to 60%, that's actually 90% of the effort that you need to undertake to get weapons-grade uranium. So Iran was weeks away from a crude nuclear bomb. And think about the situation for the United States if Iran had a crude nuclear bomb. It would be approaching a North Korea situation that it doesn't matter if you're a poor economy. If you have a nuclear weapon, there are a lot of things that the United States and others can't do to you, and your strategic options increase dramatically. So this was in January 2026. The attack against Iran has set all that back, the weapons production and certainly the capacity to get a nuclear weapon, and weaken the Iranian state considerably. It's been messy, and Trump oversold the regime change element of it. That's been harder to do than he realized. But you still got to look at the overall situation. Once again, the United States is in a much better position now. So are the allies of the United States in the Middle East, and Iran is in a far worse position. Finally, I would say that the current sort of blockade and counter-blockade going on, there's an incorrect perception that Iran can last longer than the United States. Iran is losing $250 million a day.
Right.
And this is an already impoverished economy. Its regime, we don't know the exact state of the regime, but clearly it's under more and more pressure each day. Yes, it's a political problem for Trump, but it's an existential problem if this continues for the Iranian government. So all in all, it's messy. The ease of the action has been oversold by Trump, but the United States, it was a necessary action. They're still in a better position, and Iran is in a far worse position.
If you were advising President Trump, who would you say is the most rational group to negotiate with, China or Iran?
Well, China is the most rational in the sense that it wants to be a great power. It is a great power, wants to be a superpower. If you want to be a superpower, you can't be overly reckless. You still got to play the long game. Whereas with the Iranians, it's all about regime security.
Right.
They don't care what happens to their country, really. It's all about regime security. And of course, you mix in the particular Islamist ideology that the leaders have, that adds a further component of what we would consider at least geostrategic irrationality to it. Now, the Chinese do have an ideological element, but the Chinese as I mentioned, they want to be a stable, enduring superpower, which means that they can't afford to make the same level of irrational and catastrophic decisions that the Iranians have made over the last few years.
Final question for you, and I sure appreciate your time today. How do you feel the Australia-U.S. relationship is right now? And will they get closer long term, or has Trump's boldness pushed them away a little bit?
If you look at the Australian political mentality, the current government in Australia is quite similar to the current government in Canada, to Mark Carney's government. That is that there is a political and cultural disdain for the Trump administration. Now, but beyond the current Australian government in power, if you look at the Australian country and people and population, the support for the alliance with the United States has remained consistently and overwhelmingly very strong. So what that means, which is a good thing I can say about Australia, regardless of what caricatures people have in my country of your administration or president, there is a clear-eyed understanding of our strategic interests, that the alliance is overwhelmingly in our interests, and that the Australian-America relationship remains the most important relationship. So, yes, there's frustration when you read a lot of the commentary in Australia about the sort of random shots against the Trump administration, the Trump derangement syndrome, which exists here as well. But our policies continue to be good policies because there is an undercurrent of understanding of the importance of the bilateral relationship, and that's ultimately a very good thing.
Do the Australian people, friends you know, your circle, do those who disdain President Trump, who have Trump derangement syndrome, do they take that out also on Americans, or are they able to separate it?
Most can separate it, but there are some who are starting to view America's Trump as America, but as what America's becoming. And they do that because the initial shock of the Democrats not winning the election against Trump, the shock the Democrats had in America of how on earth could a guy like Trump become president. Progressive elites in Australia had the same attitude. How on earth did the Americans vote for Trump? And their next line of reasoning is, America now must be a different country to what we thought they were. So there is a section, particularly of progressive elites in Australia, who think that America has now gone on a crazy path and it won't return. But I think the majority of Australians actually understand that caricatures of America are not reflective of what your country is. That your country, despite changes in presidency, there is an undercurrent through it which is reasonably consistent. So America first, which is ridiculed by a lot of progressive in the United States and also in Australia. For a lot of normal Australians, America first is not that unusual a philosophy. It basically just says that if systems or relationships are not working for our country, we've got to change them. That's a pretty common sense view that a lot of Australians have. So once again, the good news coming from my part of the world is Trump derangement syndrome is very apparent with many or the majority of our progressive elites, but for the vast majority of our country, there is no real problem with the United States.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, Dr. Lee, thank you for joining us today. We sure appreciate having you.
Oh, it was my pleasure and great to talk to you. And thank you again for having me.
Hope you'll join us again soon. This is Breaking Battlegrounds. We'll be right back.
Murder, mystery, secrets untold. The truth gets set free when B gets a hold. Crimes where killers roam off free, or even ones where they get caught at the scene. From cold case files to headline news, she's breaking it all down just for you. So come take a seat, don't miss a beat. B's Crime Corner's where the stories go deep.
All right, so B's Crime Corner, what do we got?
So this is a newer story. John Town, a 46-year-old, and Ara Pugh, his wife, she was 45, 2 parents from Ohio, they have been convicted guilty for killing their sick 11-year-old son, Hunter Town. He was suffering from what was called Hirschberg's disease and other health issues since birth. So Hirschsprung's is a rare congenital condition where a baby is born missing nerve cells in the lower part of their large intestine. So without these nerves, the bowel can't process and can't push the waste forward. It can be managed, though. You can live a healthy and manageable life with it, but if you don't manage it, it can kill you. So they left Hunter in this condition at an extended stay America hotel room in Independence, Ohio, to die eventually on January 10th, 2024. Then they tried to clean up what they referred to as now a crime scene, where he passed away prior to law enforcement arriving. And a little backstory too, these parents had 10 kids, so that kind of puts you in the mindset of they have that many kids, they know how to be parents. That was an active decision to let that kid die and not get him the medical treatment he needed.
Very much so, yes.
Yeah. So I did some deeper research into this because cases like this really make you just wonder why. What can make a parent do something like this? And there are a lot of different factors you can put into your, brain to try to justify it. I mean, 10 kids, that's a lot. That's a lot financially. So there's a certain type of forensic psychiatry with this that's called filicide, when the murder of a child is done by a parent. And it's categorized by 5 different psychological and motivational categories. So there's altruistic filicide, which the parents suffer from severe depression, mental illness, and they kill their child out of distorted belief. And it also looks like an extension of a parent's suicide in a way. Then there was the acutely psychotic filicide, where they're just having a psychosis episode. Fatal maltreatment. Now, this is where I think this one kind of plays a part in this case. The child's death is unintended consequences of chronic child abuse or neglect. So rather than premeditated attempt to kill,
this sounds pretty premeditated, though.
Right? It took both of them to have a conversation to decide to let one of their 10 kids die.
Yeah.
And I think they're now feeling bad about it and trying to, fight against it because their other kids, they now feel bad about losing them.
I'd be very interested in seeing like a real psychological interview breakdown of these parents, particularly them individually, because I work with animal rescue group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we do a lot of trap, neuter, return for cats, and we trap dogs and then get them to no kill shelters, whatever, because dogs captured on the street here are euthanized almost instantly, right? So the whole goal was that, and then we ended up doing a bunch of TNR too. One thing that you find that I've found a lot is, if a mother cat senses one of her litter is physically ill, she will abandon it. She will take the rest of the litter and move them and leave that one behind to die. And that really, it's sort of like connected to that when you were saying that. That's got to be some really powerful psychological stuff. Is there any indication they mistreated the other 9 kids that they have?
No, there's nothing of that, nothing of the sorts. They were both clean records. The father had a long work history providing for his family. And I mean, the judge said that it seems like the other kids have a very close relationship with each other. Mm-hmm. But no, there was no
So there's no indication of any prior abuse or outside.
Only to the mother in her childhood, which the judge...
so she was abused by her family when she was growing up.
And the lawyer tried to use that as an excuse to lessen,
I'm not one who buys much of that garbage.
I'm not either. Yeah. I mean, you have 10 other kids too. I think
you didn't abuse them.
No, exactly. And she says she's trying to go through that with therapy in prison, and she's been dealing with that. And the father didn't want to make any court statement, but the mother got up and sobbed, and they ended up getting about 7 counts of counts.
Murder.
Yeah. The biggest one though was tampering with the evidence. I mean, I think they had a moment of what did we just do? We have to fix this. But then we're we didn't know, and called 911. And it's sad because this was a condition you could live with. You could easily live with. It was hard.
I wouldn't say it's easy to live with. No. I do know someone who has that condition. It's a very difficult thing for them.
It's a day-to-day task.
It's something that you're spending a lot of. In her case, a lot of her life is dealing with it.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
So I understand the difficulty.
Oh yeah.
and it is a difficult disease to deal with.
It's just sad
But-
because he was a child. He wasn't old enough to do it yet.
Well, but here's my thing. He was 11, you said?
Yes.
I feel like at 11, you have a pretty good idea of whether you want to be alive.
Yeah, he was hospitalized the week prior to them putting him in the hotel,
Right.
though. So I think it feels like it was like financially motivated and just
It
neglect.
sounds like it probably was.
Having
I mean,
10 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also just sounds. I guess what gets me about this case is, like, monsters, I can almost understand. Monsters are monsters.
Yeah.
Right? We've talked about monsters on this program before. And
yeah.
some of them you're like, of course they did that. They're a monster.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing about these parents sounds like monsters. This sounds like one of the most unusual tragedies, but also, I mean, criminal and heinous, but somehow underlying the whole thing was just sad.
Yeah, watching that court trial too, it was very heartbreaking because you do see the emotion in the parents. You see that the disappointment in their own actions, and they know that. But yeah, they're getting 15 to life.
And you can't say it's not deserved.
No.
I mean, at all.
It's-
This is
yeah.
torture. They tortured the kid to death,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they weren't there for it, which to me makes it worse.
Yeah.
But that's what it was.
Yep. I feel like the case could have completely transpired
right.
a different way if they did not try to mess with the evidence.
And then you have to think of what happens to the other children.
Oh, exactly. That's 9 other kids.
Right. That are now, I mean, did it say anything in there if they're like grandparents or a part of the family are going to take those kids? Or
No, the only thing the judge had to say about those kids and the bright side of the case is them just being closer now. I think some of the kids are older, though, to where they could look after.
Some of them are 18 or over?
Yeah, because, I mean, 9 kids.
Yeah, you'd
she's
have to have a pretty.
45. It was a pretty big span.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you hope that is the case and those children are able to stay together because there's so many tragedies to this one.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a horrid story.
sad one,
Yeah.
with B.
Well.
Or B's crime. A sad B's crime.
All right. Well, anyway, folks, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us here on Breaking Battlegrounds. B, got anything else?
Oh, I do have our hybristophilia statistic.
Oh.
I searched.
So hybristophilia from last week,
Yes.
right?
If you missed it, go listen back. So you know.
You do need to be in on the.
Get in the loop. There is not an exact
what is
number.
it for people who aren't?
Oh,
weren't on last-
hybristophilia.
yes.
It is when you are attracted to somebody who commits a crime. So prison groupies, just anybody who's like loving a serial killer, pretty much.
Because this is a guy, listen, we're all dirty dogs, and that sounds more like high breastophilia, which pretty much we all suffer from.
Oh, that was good.
But no, it's not that. Okay.
Yeah, nope. That's a different one. But yeah, pretty much a lot of people are now suffering from it though, because TikTok has this whole side of the algorithm where content is based off of serial killer thirst traps, which are like reels of videos of them like doing mysterious walks. Just like the typical like Baywatch moment of somebody looking good. The modern day Baywatch moment, we'll call it. That's a thirst trap.
Society is so screwed.
And a lot of people are now, like, there's studies about girls becoming hybristophiliacs because they're exposed to this content, and this content makes them want it and think it's normal. So there isn't a percentage yet, but I'm hoping that there will be one soon as it grows. But unfortunately, it is growing.
This is a wild phenomenon.
It is. Just one of the many weird kinks of the world, I guess.
There's plenty of them out there. I mean,
Oh,
I guess in a certain sense it's safe, right? They're stuck behind bars.
Yeah.
You got to pick one who's not getting out.
All right. Yeah.
And,
we don't need more true crime cases.
Do you want them showing up on your doorstep?
No.
Not normal people, anyway. All right.
Well, that's it.
All right, B. Thank you so much. Fantastic as always. Jeremy, brilliant work in the studio. We love it. For all our guests, I think this was another great program. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.